All right, and I'll share my screen here. I think you can see my screen now.
Yep.
It didn't start on YouTube yet.
What? The stream should start. Yeah, it should start like in a second. Yeah. Yeah, so we got asked about development shells. This issue here just all around nix-shell. What is shell.nix? What is the flake way of doing this? I hope Yuri can help me a bit with that. What is make-shell and its arguments? Conventions, compatibility with flakes and traditional nix-shells, nix-shell and shebangs. Yeah, that sounds like a good all-around thing to take a look at. I'll open a terminal here. And so at first, let's create like a test file. Well, let's do shells. So in Nix, there's kind of two commands in one, actually. So we have nix-build and nix-shell. Underneath, they're implemented using the same binary. So we could actually take a look at real path which nix-build, real path nix-shell. Oh, what? Oh, my nix-shell is aliased. Fair enough. So, okay, they both point to the Nix binary. Underneath, the Nix binary kind of determines what to do based on the command you run it with. So they have different behaviors, but they are very similar in nature, where nix-build you can use to build a package. So let's just reference a simple one here in the default.nix file for now. So let's do a traditional kind of impure way of importing Nix packages. And let's then do packages.hello, for example. So this is a default.nix that returns a derivation. We can also check this with nix instantiate eval. We can do default.nix. It's also the default. And this, well, it gets printed a bit messy, but it is indeed a derivation. And with nix-build, we can build that derivation or substitute it, or if it's already cached, you don't need to do anything. And nix-shell, in turn, gives you an environment where that derivation can be built. You essentially enter an environment for the derivation itself. So if we go in here, we can in here see things like the source. So we can echo source, and this points to the hello source. We also have things like unpack phase. I'm not sure if it can be printed like this. Which unpack phase? Maybe. Phase. Maybe not like this. Anyways, there's an unpack phase shell variable, which you can run to unpack the source. And so once we do this, it's going to take a look at the source variable. It's going to unpack it into the local directory. And so now we have the hello here.
Yeah, I have one question regarding this. I tried to use this with a derivation I was building. And so I tried to use the phases like the unpack phase and build phase. And I had a custom phase, and I tabbed that, but instead of running my custom phase, it was running the original version. I'm wondering why.
Yeah. yeah, that's a good point. So I think phases can be defined in two different ways, either with a bash function, which is what the default phases are defined with. So we can also take a look here, stdn generic, I think it's somewhere in here, unpack phase.
You could check generic build function. It's clear how it's handled there.
Can you hear me again?
Yes, now I can.
Yeah, so this is how the default phases are defined. But when you override a phase, they get defined in a different way. And that is with environment variables. So let's take a look here. Nix Hour shells default.nix. So now let's do an override. Well, first let's do nix-shell and try this out. So unpack phase, right? We tried this already. This is well, exists already. This is a bit messy, to be honest. But yeah, unpack phase works like this, and it currently doesn't exist as an environment variable, I hope. Unpack phase. Yeah, that doesn't. Now let's overwrite the hello derivation. Let's overwrite attributes, and let's set the unpack phase to, let's say, just echo. This is the unpack phase. All right. Yeah, let's try this out. So now when we go in nix-shell and we try to run unpack phase, it's gonna use the old one. But we newly have the unpack phase environment variable set to this. Now to run this, there is a useful helper, which is a run hook, I believe. It's a bit weird that it's run hook, but I think it should also work with this.
I think it's just defined in the generic build, the way that it checks if the variable exists.
Exactly, yeah. So run hook, actually that didn't seem to work. Let's briefly take a look at the stdinf again. Let me open a separate shell here. So nixpkgs setup is run hook in here. Run hook does run a hook with specified name in the order in which it were added. So yeah, maybe that's actually not for that. Let's look at unpack phase and how it's run in here. Unpack phase, curve phase, don't unpack, blah, blah, blah. Yes. Current phase.
So there, eval $bang car
yes.
phase, which means like it checks the variable which name is in car phase variable, and if it's not there, then it uses the name of current phase, which means it uses the function with the name of the phase instead of the contents of the variable.
And so apparently this functionality isn't exposed like that you can call it yourself. But the way to kind of do this in general is to use generic build. So let's do this here. We entered the shell. We don't. I deleted the hello source. Now we can call generic build, and this will run all the phases in the order as declared. And theoretically, in like an actual Nix build, this would build the derivation. But in this case, we can't install to the Nix store because we're just a user and not the Nix build user.
Is it just supposed to point out to a temporary directory in current directory or something?
I didn't quite get that.
I thought it was supposed to have an out directory in current directory instead of pointed to Nix store.
I don't think by default, but that's a good idea. We could set out equals print working directory, the current directory, and then try this again. And that works indeed. So now in here we have, well, no install rule.
It still tries to create Nix store.
Does it? Oh yeah, here. I see. So yeah, that actually building the derivation here often doesn't work by default. I think there are some, like, depending on the build system used, there are some workarounds. So probably here we could try a configure, maybe. Unpack phase, and then I thought we should already be in the source directory here.
No,
Anyways.
it's a special case in generic build that if we are in unpack phase, then we need to change tier to the.
I see. So it's in
directory.
generic build. I see. Yeah. So yeah, maybe if you actually want to reproduce a build, it might be better to just look at what the build actually does, or run the phases manually like that. But yeah, I guess you need to use, I believe, this eval unpack phase to actually run that phase then. There's also hooks. So that's what I was trying to do earlier. So, and generally, actually, that's a kind of better way to run custom things. So instead of setting the unpack phase, because there is a default unpack phase that's pretty much good in most cases, if you don't want it to unpack by default, like running the default unpack phase, you could do don't unpack. That's true. And then this is not needed, but you can use pre-unpack and post-unpack to declare custom scripts. A bit of a roundabout way of doing it, but if you want to kind of have it easier to run these, I guess that would work. So here, let's do unpack phase or post-unpack. Though actually this might not work, because if you don't run the unpack phase, the post-unpack hook might not run either. Let's try it out in any case. So, well, but we wanted to just run this. So let's try run hook unpack phase. Yeah, that still runs the default phase. It shouldn't if you use generic build. Yeah, I don't think that did anything. Anyways, we're a bit off topic here, I guess, for this question. So yeah, this is it's a bit weird with these phases and how they're run. Honestly, I'd like a refactoring of this, but yeah, either as an environment variable or as a bash function, they're defined. So you might have to run one or the other.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And okay, so this is nix-shell. It runs. So by default, nix-shell uses the default.nix file. But if there's a shell.nix file, it will use that instead. So in the shell.nix, let's say we declare something else here. Like, let's use packages.neovim and then run nix-shell. Yeah, and this uses neovim now. So yeah, there's sometimes kind of that the default.nix, because that nix-build still uses the default.nix for building. Let's actually remove this override here. So if we write this out real briefly, nix-build defaults to default.nix, nix-shell defaults to shell.nix, then default.nix. And so this kind of indicates that you want to have your nix-shell for your project in the shell.nix and your buildable derivation in the default.nix. And those are often a bit different because let's say you want, so let's say you have some project and you want some shellHook. Let's do that. And for that, you might not want to use just like a normal derivation, but a make-shell instead. So yes, let's use mkShell. mkShell is a kind of simple derivation builder that returns a derivation, but the derivation isn't meant to be buildable. So yes, in here, well, this by itself should work already. You also don't need to give it a name or anything like that. It works by default. Yep. And if we try to build this, it will give us an error. Now, nix-build by default defaults to default.nix. And so if you want to build the shell.nix explicitly, which you shouldn't really do normally. Oh, it actually does work now. That changed recently. So yeah, it returns, I think, just something you can source to get the... Yeah. Okay. Don't rely on this, apparently. But yeah, it's not really meant to be buildable. So you might have a mkShell in here, and you might have, let's say, your developer environment tools in here. So generally, you use native build inputs for that. And we'd add things like, let's add Git, for example. Although Git probably implicit, but Git, let's also add neovim, sure. And so this, we'll get neovim, okay. But you also might have dependencies for your own project. So let's say Node.js is the first thing that comes to mind right now. And so when you enter this shell, it will make these tools available. So now when we do this, it's gonna fetch Node.js additionally, and we can do Node here. But now you might also have a default.nix where you define your project. So you might have packages in here, and you might have a packages.stdnf.make derivation in here, which has a name. It has a also native build inputs. And here it also uses Node.js. And then let's do something like build phase equals node version, and then install phase. Let's just have a new version 2 out. Let's just make sure this works.
Prepared with packages.
Oh, yeah. In nix-pkgs, you'd probably use a bit of a different convention here. We might refactor this later. So it doesn't work because we don't have source. Let's do don't unpack then. All right. And that works. And we have the node version in the result. Okay, so this simulates your package build. But now it's a bit problematic because what if you want to use an explicit Node.js version here? So like Node.js, what is there? Well, a good tip, something I personally like doing, is to expose the packages here so you can easily inspect them. And so what I usually do is a pass-through where I just propagate the packages. This way I can do, for example, nix REPL as well, and just do packages.node.js and so then see all the versions with autocomplete. So let's say we want the Node.js 18. All right. Now this should still work. Yep. Okay, but now we have the problem that we still have the shell.nix, and if we go into nix-shell, the node version here is another one. So if you have these completely separate files here, it's very easy to get inconsistencies where, also the nix packages import here, the versions of the packages, I'm not sure what else there is. And so a convention I like to have is to, in the default.nix, well, you can structure this however you want, but a pass-through works well here to somehow expose the shell you want to you want people to use here. And so we could do this here, just pass through and declare it right here. So we do packages.mkShell. We say, so mkShell, we could do this, native build inputs, and then something like packages, and then I guess we could like make sure they're the same, but that again has kind of the same problem. We could define something up here like node.js equals packages.node.js18, and then use this everywhere as a variable. This would also work. But what I would recommend, or what actually a really useful functionality of mkShell, is that you can use inputsFrom. This is a special attribute to mkShell. Generally, it forwards everything to just make derivation, but this is a special one, which allows you to give a list of derivations, and it's going to propagate the inputs from those derivations into the shell. So in here, we can say our derivation up here. Actually, this is a bit inconvenient here because we can't refer to it. Let's take a small refactoring. Let's do or package, get this entire thing, declare it here, fix the indentation. All right. And we could also just move the shell declaration up or down here. So declare the shell here. InputsFrom, I'm going to say package now. All right, and in the result, we want also the package, and we also need to make sure to add the shell as a pass-through. Latin statements, the one using here, they're recursive. So actually, the shell here refers to the package, and the package refers to the shell. So that's useful. All right, and yeah, so the inputsFrom here makes sure that the shell we have here has all the inputs from here. So native build inputs, propagated build inputs, all the things like that. It will also do useful things like merging shell hooks. Let's look at that later. Okay, now when we try this out, well, we need to do one more thing. We don't want to have our declaration in here. So what we need to do instead is to import the default.nix file and access the shell from there. Now, it's also a bit of a convention that you can customize some arguments in the shell.nix, in the default.nix. So up here, what we've seen this in previous Nix hours as well, where there's like a way to get a packages. I'll just keep it a bit simple here for now, but this is something you might see. And then it's also much easier to add further arguments later. So honestly, even if you don't need any arguments here, I recommend just having one so you can add customizations later. So here we do use packages. And now in here, we're going to call it with an empty attribute set. So it defaults to the default. And get the shell. Now when we try nix-shell, and node version, it's 16. We still use 16 here, but it does match the one we have here. Yes. And now let's do, what is it? X18 or something like that. Or 18X, I believe. No, let's just do nix REPL and just, where's that node.js? Oh, it's a -18_x. Okay. And nix-build. Yeah, so this is 18 and this is also 18. So they match now, which is nice. All right, something, yeah, and also now the shell.nix file doesn't really need to be updated at all. You have a single default.nix file for everything. Now, shellHook, let's look at that. So shellHook is a script that gets run whenever you enter the next shell. So in here, we could say shellHook equals well, welcome to the dev environment. All right, and now when we do nix-shell, it's gonna print this. And there's some useful things you can do in there. So you might have to set certain variables. You could do this there. Actually, you don't. Well, you could do this like export foo equals bar, and this would work. We don't need this for variables because variables are propagated from the derivation itself. So in here we could also do it just like this. And this will also work. You might, so these variables here in the Nix code, you can't really have something dynamic here. So sometimes you still need this. I've seen this, for example, when you have some secret that you need to get from some applications. So like some secret equals, and then you can run a command here and be like, pass, for example, is what I use to manage passwords, and then do something like github.com. Not going to do that here, so I don't leak my secrets, but you can do something more dynamic here. Let's see, we had a comment. Oh yeah, question, what happens if I delete the current shell.nix? Yeah, let's try this out. So let's comment this out. So currently we get the dev environment. If we remove shell.nix, it's not getting the dev environment anymore. So nix-shell, if there is no shell.nix file, it uses the default.nix, and it uses the kind of the derivation that gets returned from this file. And so in this case, that's the package here. And this would be this one. And this one doesn't contain our specific developer environment here. So we haven't added this here, but we might want to add
the attribute.
Oh yeah, that would work. So like nix-shell -a shell. Yeah, that works. Yeah, but generally, right, shell.nix is where you can kind of make a better default for that. So let's do, oh, I deleted this. Okay. Yeah, and
shell.nix, I think, is a convention, so that if you are in your new repository and you see shell.nix, you know where to look for the shell, basically. So as opposed to like having just default.nix and then you don't know whether they didn't bother about shell or if the default shell is fine.
Yeah. So yeah, if you see, I mean, in general, if you see Nix files in third-party repositories, that's generally a good sign. And if there's a shell.nix, that's even better usually. There is also, so ideally, the derivations themselves could expose the shell environment themselves. And in many cases, that's not, that you might need some extra things here. So like an editor or like a language server is something common as well. Or write some shell hooks, some secret stuff, especially for like testing, I guess. And there's also So I know of one useful project, which I think is the pre-commit hooks. I'm not sure, pre-commit hooks. Let me search for that. This one, maybe. There's actually two. Let's check out this one. And I saw a third one down there. Yeah, so I believe this one kind of next commit run. Yeah, okay, they have some shell.nix integration here, which yeah, that would install git pre-commit hooks, which are useful if you want to run like formatting, some formatters before committing and other stuff. Yeah, and shellHook here as well, that gets merged together for mkShell. So one thing you could do, and that I've seen before, is that you might have multiple components of your package. You might have a backend and a front end. And both of them might be independent on their own, and they might have their own shell.nix here. So let's just simulate this briefly, shell.nix, and also touch backend shell.nix. Actually, we should fill these with something at least. That would take a bit of time. But yeah, you might import these packages here, front end equals front end. Typically, you should we should have a default.nix file, so you could just do this, which is the same as this. And you might also want to propagate the arguments here, so the front ends know the packages and some other bits and stuff. But in the end, you might have two of them, backend, and both of them would have a shell. And then mkShell could be used to combine them using frontend.shell and backend.shell. So I'm not entirely sure if you actually need this, but if you need it, the mkShell can do that for you. And so the top level default.nix here, or the top level shell.nix here, would then give you a shell for developing both front end and back end with the kind of merged inputs of those. Yes. Let me commit this up because it won't work. Yeah. But just brief stop. Do we have a question about the things I just talked about, or was it too fast or anything unclear?
I think it was very good, the example of shell.nix versus default.nix. I was wondering, since nix-shell falls back to default.nix, if there was a way to define both your default package but also your shell inside default.nix and avoid shell.nix completely. But as you demonstrated, nix-shell would simply sort of reuse the package and not give the extra shell niceness. So you probably do want both, but you want shell.nix to be a simple reference to the shell attribute inside default.nix.
Yeah. I can imagine, and maybe I've actually seen a proposal like this somewhere, that nix-shell, there's nothing stopping it from just like checking whether there's a .shell, and if there's that .shell, it could use that by default.
Yeah, that was basically what I was almost expecting nix-shell to do, but it don't. But then again, this is sort of what flakes solves, because there you define everything as separate attributes, and then the tooling around is smart enough to look at those attributes and use them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's look at flakes in a bit.
Yeah.
Something we could do to kind of simulate this, I don't recommend this, but we could add the shellHook, and you can also add custom tools here into the path. So you could be like expert path equals, and then let's do like packages.lib.make bin path. That's a good utility for creating a binary path from a list of packages. Then we could do like neovim and get here and stuff. And then, of course, propagate the rest of the path. Yeah, that's could be done. And then it should also somewhat work without a shell.nix. Let's try this. Oh, packages dot neovim. And vim. Yeah. But yeah, I don't recommend this. This is a bit unconventional. But yeah, let's now. Wait, did we miss anything here? Right. So flakes. Let's make sure and its arguments. Let's see. Are there any other arguments to mkShell? Actually, is mkShell documented? I hope it is. Yes, it is. So mkShell shows you, oh, there's also packages. Okay, I guess that's kind of a more convenient attribute name than native build inputs. I guess it does the same thing. All right, we have shellHook, inputs from packages name.
I think it handles them a bit differently.
Packages, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. So in nix-pkgs, I believe it's in like mkShell. Okay, let's how to find a definition again. Another way, there's various ways, but we could use unsafe get attributes. That's a kind of impure built-in that allows you to get the position of an attribute. And we could use mkShell packages here. This then gives us this, which shows us the all packages line where it's defined, but in of itself, that's honestly not that useful. And then something else is we could do, we could evaluate mkShell.meta.position, though in this case, yeah, it's a function, so it doesn't have actually a meta.position. So that wouldn't work. Something else we could do is mkShell grep for mkShell equals. That also gives us the all packages definition. And then in here, this then points us to the directory. So let's go in here. Let's see packages. We're wondering about how that's implemented. Okay, it's handled the same as native build inputs. All right, but yeah, that's a bit more convenient. I think that's actually somewhat new. That might not have been there like a year ago. Let's
probably to improve UX because it's very. It's not easy to understand why you have to build inputs instead of packages.
Yeah. And actually, I just noticed an error here. We don't want the inputs from neovim. We want this to be native build inputs or the packages. So yeah, let's move neovim here. Yeah, so the difference, there's a significant difference from between these. If we have neovim in here, we'd have a shell to develop neovim and to build neovim. If we have it in here, it's that we have the built neovim in the shell. Yes. Okay. Documentation is great to see. Actually, this kind of surprises me. This is also fairly new that the shell can be built. Oh, but yeah, we could talk about this. So this is recent, but there's also something older. So you might want to build all your dependencies for the shell and CI and push those to a cache, so developers don't need to build all the tools all the time. Apparently, the Nix build of the shell. Oh, we deleted the shell again. Writing this for the third time. So if you build the shell.nix, this is apparently now something that should be a derivation that depends on the shell inputs. And so we could briefly verify this with nix-qr that returns the runtime dependencies for a Nix store path. Or if it's a derivation file, it would return the build time dependency graph. But here we should be able to see, so we have a bunch of these. NewVim should be in here. Yeah, NewVim is in here. And did we have Node.js? Yeah, Node.js is in here. So if you have cachix set up, for example, you would do something like cachix push, or I think it's nix-build shell.nix and then cachix push. And maybe some key here. Yeah, so this works. There is also something a bit older that has, I think it's been in Nix packages for like a couple of releases now already, and that is the input derivation. So every derivation has this, and it's a derivation that contains the inputs of the derivation, just like the shell.nix we can build here. This essentially has the same result, but specific for this one. So we have the package here. This doesn't include our developer tools and stuff like this. But yeah, I guess it's not really necessary anymore, this one. But this is how you would have done it before, because in an older version, you couldn't build shell.nix. But now you can, so it should be good. Yeah, then let's look at the... Oh, my window manager is crashing for some reason. Let's look at the flakes.nix as well. So flake.nix, let me start with a simple inputs, nix packages. Let's just make sure we have like master, I guess. Outputs, and then self nix packages. Not writing flakes that often, so I hope I'm not doing too bad here. So in here, I guess it usually looks something like this, where we have the packages defined here, import nix packages, and then a, well, it needs to be system specific.
You don't need to import them.
Oh yes, just like this, I guess. And then like legacy packages dot hello, for example. Yes, it might be.
Wait,
yeah.
You should remove .hello the line 6.
Oh yeah, if I do, yes, good point.
Shouldn't you do inputs.nix packages?
No, the inputs. This is the
Oh, I
set
see,
of
you pass
inputs
it.
that gets.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but yeah, this would be something else. We could do this, and then inputs.nix packages. Yeah, and now actually it would be nice. So personally, I like providing compatibility with older with traditional Nix. And so it would be nice if we could just reuse the definition from default.nix and have, so in the flake.nix, so it works for both. And in here, we have the packages up there. There's also ways to kind of import the Nix packages from the flake-locked file, but I'm gonna not do that for now. And actually, we do need something else here, and that is the system. Flakes requires us to be very pure. So I'm gonna add a default for the traditional Nix. I'm gonna propagate this into here, inherit system. I also want to make sure we don't have any overlays. That's an impurity. Also, config should be set to an empty so we don't get it from somewhere else. And yeah, this should be fairly generic. Yeah, I mean, this is still an impurity, but it won't be used for flakes at least. Should get rid of that too at some point though. So yeah, then let's try. So let's try it like this. We define our package, we import the default.nix, we pass system. Actually, should I?
You should pass packages, I think, here instead.
Oh yeah, then it will get used by default. So let me do this, inherit packages. All right, so this is our package now. We should then also have package.shell accessible. So then let's do packages.linux.default equals our package. And let's do dev shells, the flake equivalent of the kind of shell.nix default. Set this to package.shell. I think, Yuri, what do you think of this? Does it look okay?
Yeah, seems fine.
All right, so let's just give it a try. So nix-build, expected a set, but got a string.
Oh, just remove the
URL.
conditional input. You
What?
can just remove it because it will be taken from your registry.
Yeah, though the registry is kind of a flake impurity, which I'm not a big fan of. I like declaring my inputs more explicitly,
Okay.
but yeah, you're right. It could be removed. So let's try nix-build. Fetching Nix packages, I'm kind of surprised that we're in like 2023 now and this takes like 10 seconds to unpack and download, or 10 seconds to unpack itself.
It's 100 megabytes of code, compressed code.
Yeah, I think I've actually seen a proposal to switch to a different compression mechanism there, which should be faster.
And also, if you have auto-optimized Nix store enabled, then it is read twice, essentially. So it's written to disk, then every file is read, checksummed, and verified. So like it's...
Yeah. But yeah, so we did a Nix build. We have the same result we have for our traditional Nix build. We also can do, actually, this is different. Because yeah, the Nix packages in our default.nix, that comes from just my impure Nix packages here. So I think let's try getting that from the flake-locked instead. What is a project that does that already? Maybe I can copy just some code from there.
Flake
parts. Flake compat.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It does. Oh, you mean to use flake compat directly?
Yeah, you can just use it. Basically, you can copy from the README. There is like a short description of.
Oh yes. So basically, something like, Yeah,
Yeah.
like
You can just replace it with nix-OS, nix-pkgs, and then you have basically the same stuff.
place it with nix. Oh, yeah, this part, so fetch tarball. Okay. Let's do that. Now this default here will get a bit uglier. So this is the nix packages. We have the log file, we have the flake.lock. This isn't needed. Let's also make this a bit nicer. Nix packages. Okay, replace this with nix-OS. Nix packages. Archive. That looks good. tar.gz nar hash.
Nix-pkgs.
Oh, yes. Thanks. Okay, now we should be able to replace this with a variable. Okay. Formatting, I'd probably use Alejandra nowadays to format this. We might run this in a couple minutes. All right, now let's try this again. So nix-build has this version, and nix-build also has this version. Very nice. And I believe they should also reuse the same cached version. But now it's nice we can do nix flake-lock update input nix-pkgs. I'm actually not sure if anything changed, but
it didn't. It would have written what changed.
Yes. I was hoping someone committed something
to master for this whole 15 minutes.
Yeah. But we could, for example,
switch
use
to unstable.
Yeah. Well, actually, so Nix's 22.5 just got doesn't have support anymore. That was a month after the new release. The old release gets essentially deprecated, so we don't want to use 22.05 anymore. But yes, let's try this. Next flake-lock update input.
Actually, after you change the definition of the input, you don't even have to run update input. It will update it during the build.
Oh, nice. And next build, fetching. Okay, but yes, we could also briefly take a look at. I do think in the Nexus wiki there's the flake schema declaration, flakes. Oh. This has all the things in here. So here we can see def shell used by nix develop. Then packages for next build. There is also formatter. That's fairly new. Well, actually, let's try this out in the last couple minutes here. So there's a well, it's not mentioned here, but there is a new nix FMT in newer Nix versions, which allows you to run a formatter. But you do need to declare the formatter explicitly. And for this, let's do formatter. So we need the system .default. I don't think we need a default. Packages let me use Alejandra. Okay. And let's try this. So actually, let's git init. Let's remove some stuff we don't need. Let's git ignore result. Also, let's remove the backend and frontend. We didn't take a close look at that. All right, initial commit. And now let's do nix FMT. See if that works. All right, that seems to have worked. Let's see the changes. Okay, it reformatted this here. Yeah. That looks pretty good. Although I don't really like this too much. Does it maintain new lines? I hope so. Yeah, it does. Okay. We have like one more minute here. Does anyone have a question about this or something else? Or something that was unclear?
I have one very not necessarily related to shell, but like what's the ad hoc to install a package from a flake?
That's a good question. There's an Nix profile which works with flakes. I guess Nix profile install. Oh, actually, this was install. Actually, is there install? Yeah, that does exist. I believe it. Yeah, I guess it would be something like this. So Nix profile install dot probably. Yeah. And then it is installed here. Yes. So this.
Okay, thanks.
We did not cover this nix-shell and shebangs, but yeah, I think you can. This doesn't exist with new flakes, but I believe it's documented in the nix-shell man page. You can search for shebang here. Yeah, somewhere here. Yeah, use as a dot exclamation mark interpreter. You can read all about that here. But yeah, if you have a question, feel free to also ask this in the next one, or also feel free to open issues in this repository, so we can know in advance what to talk about. All right, but yeah, that's it for this week. Thanks for joining, and have a nice weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
So.